Hey guys, so today we are going to be filming my Where Are We Now video, which is kind of like a mid-year stats, except we are now in August, so not mid-year at all whatsoever. The sun is also going down, so we'll see how the lighting holds up. But I wanted to do a natural lighting video, like it's summer supposedly. Let's just get to it. So first of all, let's just do stats, because I think that's the best place to start. First of all, according to Goodreads, I've read 100 books so far this year. Yay, which is good, but I don't know, usually, I don't know, my average for the past couple of years has been around 180. So I don't know, I'm not looking like I'm gonna hit 180 this year, which is fine. What are we? We're on month 8. It takes me about 4 months to read 50 books. So I should reach about 150 towards the end of the year, which I am happy with. I'm happy with that. But it's just interesting to note that there's been a real slowdown of my reading this year. Part of me wanted to attribute that towards the creation of Booktube, because like this is the first year that I've like been doing Booktube. However, I wasn't doing Booktube for a lot of this year and I had a major slump. I don't know, I just think that this year has just been a bit slow for me in terms of reading. I don't know if I've read massive all-time favourites this year, which is interesting. It's all very complex. So we'll have to monitor that at the end of the year. And then maybe I can give you more of a retrospective of the entire year as to what my reading has been like this year. But so far, if I was to describe it in one word, I would say it's just been different. My reading has been different this year. And I'm not trying to make that a negative. It's just been different. I've still read a lot more than the majority of people, I want to say. Like I still, like, a lot of people aren't readers, not to sound pretentious. Did that sound pretentious? I was just saying, like, I read a lot. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I read a lot, so I'm not being negative. 100 books is amazing. I'm happy with that. But, yeah, it's just less than before I started Booktube and before I turned 21, I guess. Maybe this is my adult reading amount. Who knows? Right, so let's look at the stats. First of all, I track my stats using my own Google spreadsheet. However, it is my own, but it is heavily influenced by G from Bookworth's spreadsheet. And actually, let me not even say it's my own. It's basically an amalgamation of G's, like Bookish Roast's reading spreadsheet, Cassidy's reading spreadsheet, as well as Ali Hardback Corder's spreadsheet. Like, they are the people who have like, they've had ideas and stuff like that, and then I'm like, oh, I want that, let me figure out how to do that, blah blah blah. But I think I use the base looks and aesthetics from Cheese, because I like Cheese base looks and aesthetics, but I kind of like go in and I tinker. That's where I've got my stats from, and it took me days, hours and hours and hours of my life to update this retrospectively, because the last time I tracked was in March. And so it's taken me hours of my life to update this, so I'm not getting behind again. That's a lie, but I'm gonna try not to get as many months behind as that. Looking at the stats, it looks like I've read the most in July, and I thought that because when I saw that I'd read 20 books in July, I was like, that's actually crazy, that's so many books. I don't know, it's just a lot for me this year. Maybe in the previous year it would have been less so. 20 books in July, that was a lot, and I was happy for that. But that is very much because of Summerween. I was daily vlogging, and so therefore I was daily reading as well, and I read a lot of books for that. So I reckon if I hadn't, it still would have been a high volume reading month, but it wouldn't have been as high as 20. July is also the month that I read the most pages, which shows that like I wasn't just reading graphic novels in order to boost the page count or book count, sorry, of July, which is good. I like that. So it's both. It's even. This next stat, the amount, sounds astronomical to me. Like, I'm not sure if it is or if it's not, but to me it sounds astronomical. It says the total hours listened this year is 636 hours and 55 minutes. So basically 637 hours of listening. That's astronomical. That is a crazy amount of listening. And the thing is, I don't always input the audio if I didn't read it. If I didn't listen to it, it's not in here. Unlike the pages where, like, even if I didn't read it physically, I've got it in here. So that is crazy. To be honest, I listen to most things on 2 times speed, so we will have to like divide that in half to be like more like 318, let's say, or 390. I need to work this out. Okay, let's do this mouse, because that seems like a whole lot. Sorry. Look at me, it's like I'm still at school. I'm a stationary gal, what can I say? 646.9, we're just gonna call it, divided by 2 equals 318.45. What are we doing? Divided by 24. That means in the past 8 months or 7 months, I've spent 13 days. 13 days listening to audiobooks. Now, I do often tend to what's it called? You know what I'm saying? Multitask. I do tend to multitask, so a lot of that listening is done, like, for example, when I'm walking or when I'm doing something else. But 13 days. I don't know, that just feels like a lot to me. Like, 13 days? Hold on, let's see how many hours I've slept. So 8? No, I can't be bothered. Maybe if editing me will tell you how many hours I've slept on average in this time. I don't know, 13 days feels like a lot. You tell me. Continuing about hours listened, this is really interesting to me. I've listened to the most hours in June and not July. So even though I read more in July, I didn't listen to more in July, which is actually interesting because July was the first month that I've, like, started to come out of my only audible slump. Like, the majority of the stuff I was reading, I was listening to it. I was not reading physically at all whatsoever, which we'll get back into when it comes to how I'm doing with my reading for my shelves. I don't know, I just find that interesting though, that it's obviously reflected in the stats that July I started to read more physically. Having a look at the reading method, it says only 39.4% of my reading was done via audiobook, which to me feels low. Like 60% to me feels low because of how I feel, just how I feel. But then having a look at it, it says 21.8% is mixed media, and 99% of that mixed media is having the ebook or the physical along with the audiobook. So therefore, in total, that's more looking like, calculate it out, I was going to say 80%, but like, let's just do it. 59.4 add 21.8. Also, guys, my mental maths has gone down the drain. Like, what happened? 81.2%. That to me feels more accurate of how much audiobook listening I've done. 80% of my reading has had an audiobook accompaniment, basically. That's a lot, but that's how I've been. Like, I just have not been reading ebooks. I have not been reading physical books. It says here that I've read 11 books physically and 8 on ebook. Now, I'm assuming that a lot of those numbers are graphic novels because, baby. But also, I'm a bit shocked because I would have thought that I read more ebooks than physical books. Before, historically, I'm more of an ebook reader than a physical reader. 96% of my reading has been my first time reading it and not a reread, which is typical. Like, I don't really tend to reread that much. I do enjoy rereads, and I will reread, especially when I'm reading a lot in a year. That's when I usually tend to up my rereads. I reread series. I very rarely tend to reread standalones. Talking about series, it says I've started 28 series this year. 28. Like, there are people out there who don't have that many series on the go at all. Yeah, that's how many I've started. However, I've read 19 sequels. I don't know what that means or how you want to relate that, but I've read 19 sequels and I've only finished 4. Well, let me give you the full context before I tear myself. So I finished 4 series this year. I'm not continuing any further on 6 of them, and I'm up to date with 11. So, therefore, that's not that bad. When we put all of that together, that means 21 of the 28 of the series is resolved. Like, does that make sense? Like, we're good. We don't have to do any action on them for 21 of the 28. That's 7 series. I've started, I'm halfway through, I need to keep going on, which is a lot, man. That's a lot. That's not even continuing the series that I already have, because I have loads of series that I'm just like ongoing and I chip my way through. I don't know what to tell you. I like having lots of series on the go, apparently. Like, I'm a serial seriesser. Well, I'll do a whole video about one of my series. I don't know. How do I feel about this? I feel like as I was trying to climb out of my reading slump, I was just reading anything and everything. And it is what it is. I was making no effort. I had no interest at all in continuing series I'd already started. That wasn't my vibe. My vibe was I wanted new shiny things to distract me from the fact that I wasn't reading. Do you know what I mean? So the next one we have is the genres. According to this, my most read genre at 17.8% is mystery. Shock horror. Mystery. I'm a mystery babe. I don't know what to tell you. I'm a mystery babe. Okay? That is followed quite closely to 15.8% non-fiction. I don't know what's happening. Like, I've liked non-fiction, don't get me wrong. But this year, I feel like I always have a non-fiction on the go. And I think it's because I've kind of learned that, like, I can listen to a non-fiction in the office. I can listen to a non-fiction as I'm working. So I usually have a non-fiction on the go, even to just listening to The Office, or kind of like to have as a podcast, and I often find them quite interesting. There's so many non-fictions that I have on the moment, and I have out from the library and that I'm interested in. I'm feeling a bit swamped by non-fiction at the current moment, but I think that's reflected because this year has just been a non-fiction year, and I'm actually very happy. It feels like I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm developing, I'm hearing other people's stories. That's where I feel like real empathy is. Like, do you know what I mean? People say read fiction for empathy, but like read non-fic. I'm happy with this. Joint second with non-fiction though, which is a complete shock, is thriller. This is very new. Like, I'm a mystery babe, which is why mystery is number one, but thrillers have come out of nowhere this year. I don't really understand what that's about. I mean, I did read thrillers for Halloween, but then also just in general, I've just been reading thrillers, which is bizarre. I can't tell you what it's about. However, I will put a caveat here, because I always say, like, I'm not a thriller person. I'm not a thriller babe at all whatsoever. But I think it's because my thriller reading has been very targeted thrillers. Like, it's not domestic and it's not psychological. One thing about me is, do not recommend me a psychological or a domestic thriller. Shall I say it again? No, I won't. Technically, the thriller genre is a lot wider than that. And I think this year I've been exploring parts of the thriller genre that aren't just psychological and thing. So like serial killer books, I suppose those are thrillers. Those aren't really mysteries. And I've been reading those and like just other things. And so I've been enjoying them. The third most read genre is romance, and that is the most shocking out of everything, because if you ask me, I've always been a romance reader from the time I was like, let me say 11. Maybe 11's a bit young. But like there's romance in the Hunger Games. So and I've loved that. And then like Wattpad, I was reading romances. Like, do you know what I mean? So like throughout my reading journey, I've been reading romances. I say that to say that this year has felt like the least romance year of my life. Like, I don't feel like I've been reading romances at all this year. I don't know what it is about me and romances, but we have a bit of a separation. And I think that might be because I tend to read my romances like on an ebook, and as I said, ebooks I haven't been reading this year, as is shown in the stats. You know, my ebooks were the lowest of all formats. So I think that's also played into why I feel like I'm not reading romances, because I haven't read that much ebooks of romances, which is funny. But the fact that this is third shows that I still am. I think it's just because I'm used to here and I'm here, so it feels like I'm not reading any, but I actually am. So that's kind of interesting. But it's my third most read instead of like my second, which I think is maybe typical. So the lowest after that is science fiction and magical realism. That's not shocking to me. I always say I don't read magical realism because I find it very hard to suspend my disbelief. When it comes to magical realism, I'm like... As for sci-fi, it's a bit sacrilegious, isn't it? I used to read more fantasy, but I guess I've never really gotten into my sci-fi bag. I think I usually only read a couple sci-fi a year. But for it to be on the same level as magical realism, that's not great. Of the 100 books I've read, only 5 have been translated works. And I feel like that's typical of my reading. I don't usually tend to read many translated works, which I don't know what that says about me. I think I might try and make a concerted effort to read more translated fic towards the end of the year, perhaps. But 4 of the translated books have been Japanese. Again, what does that say about me? Like, there's more to the world than Japan. In terms of how I got my books, the source that I read the most from was Scribd, with 19.8%, followed by Kindle Unlimited and Audible joining at 15.8%, followed up by BorrowBox. This is interesting to me because recently I wanted to cast Scribd. Like, in my head, I always feel like I've got to be using Scribd, otherwise it's not worth my money. I've got to be using Scribd, otherwise it's not worth my money. And in the past month or so, I'm like, I don't know if I've been using Scribd enough. Like, I need to be using Scribd more. And so I've been like trying to use Scribd more. And I think that's been a thing in my head all year, because like, I'm a broke girl. I need to like carefully invest my money into certain spaces. Or whether it's because I've been actively thinking every so often, you need to use Scribd more. Or if it's just like a bit of a disconnect with reality. Babe, you're using Scribd. So I don't know what to say about that. Then my library. So BorrowBox is third. But technically, if we combine a lot of these that are from the library, then the most that my reading would be is from the library. And that makes sense to me. Like, I've got £39 charge. But if we break it down, like, for all of the reading that I do on the library, it's totally worth it, you know. It's just that right now I've got a £39 fine, which is just... I'm like, can I have a payment plan? I can actually pay it. Like, I don't want anybody thinking, wow, she can't even pay her £39 bill. I can pay my £39 bill. But it's like, what was free is now £39. Apparently my average rating for the year is 3.5, which, like, I guess, meh, which I guess is higher than other years. I don't feel like I've had as many, like, 1 stars or 2 stars this year, which is good, but I also don't feel like I've had as many 5 stars this year, which is bad. So it's just been a bit of a meh year, do you know what I mean? It's just meh. Most of my reads this year have been 2022 reads, and that's not shocking to me because, as I've just displayed, the majority of books that I read are from the library in some source, whether that's BookBox, which is my library, Libby, which is my library, or just the physical books from the library. There usually tends to be a bit of a lull between when it's published and when it becomes available for me, or whether that's through it takes my library a while to acquire it, or it's got holds and so therefore it takes a while. We've got the queer rep and 64.3% is absent, which isn't that great, but I mean, that's less than I thought it was. I thought it was going to be the majority, like 80%. I mean, it still is the majority because the majority is more than half. But, like, I just assumed that it would be, like, 80% because I've had no concerted effort to diversify my reading this year as I've been trying to claw my way out. So the fact that it's at least present or it's the main character for the majority of my reading is great. And I love that main character isn't the lowest, because if the main character was the lowest of all 3 options, that would upset my soul. However, disability rep, I very clearly need to do something about this because, yeah, this graph is just terrifying. And then for POC author, again, I'm a bit surprised. Like, 63% of my reading is not POC authors, but I thought that was going to be a lot higher. Just keeping it a buck. Like, I thought it was going to be a lot higher than that. And so, therefore, the fact that it's not is good to me, which is kind of sad. That's good to me. But as I said, I've been no concerted effort into doing it. I mean, apart from, like, my natural effort. Does that make sense? Don't know if that makes any sense. Like, obviously, I naturally tend to incline more to POC authors or more to diverse books, like, just naturally. But, like, I haven't specifically been searching out books, like, gotta get my hands on it because I haven't been reading enough. Let me put my hands on, if that makes sense. So, overall, I don't really know. I don't really know how to feel about these stats. This year, I'm just kind of monitoring it, and then as of next year, we'll see what I need to do. Like, whether I'm like blackout year, which I don't know if I'm going to do, but I think I might do blackout genres next year, like only black romances next year. That's what I'm really thinking. Because, as I said, like, I don't know, I just feel like I might have some stipulations. Of like, it has to be diverse spines only romances next year. So, like, you have to come with some representation in a romance or I'm not reading you. That's how I feel. But this year we are just monitoring that situation, and we'll come back to it next year. Why romances in particular, I don't know, but that's how I feel. I'll talk about all of that if that ends up happening. Nationality, having a look, 43.8% of my books are written by Americans. I'm not American. How do I feel about that stat? I feel like I'm not American. Also, here's the thing. I want to read outside of, like, the global north. Is that the right term? I want to read more outside of the west, if that's the right term. I want to read more globally, right? But if I'm not reading more globally, I at least want to be reading more British authors. I don't know. I just, like, I'm not American. So for 43.8% of my books to be written by Americans, it's like, it's fine. I think it's important for me to, like, read more locally to me. I want to support more local authors. I want to contribute to that. But I feel like this is probably because, like, a lot of Booktube is American and a lot of the Booktubers that I watch are American. So therefore, a lot of the books that I see are hyped. And also, I think that there's a lot more published from America than the UK, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure, but the size differences of the countries makes me think that there must be more books published in America than in this here UK. So that would make sense to me. And yeah, those are all the stats I'm going to go into now. I've got a lot more stats at the end of the year, but we'll go into that then. Overall, my assessment is I didn't do as bad as I thought I was. Like, this whole time I'm like, oh my god, this shit's gone terribly. I haven't read anything. You've read 100 books. Like, well done. That was my Goodreads goal. Like, my Goodreads goal was, like, as long as I read 100 this year, I don't care. And I said that at the beginning of the year, which was maybe I knew something was brewing and I didn't know I knew, but I knew. But yeah, I was like, as long as I read 100 books, that's fine. And it is fine. I'm happy. Like, even if I read one book for the rest of the year, like I've read 101 books, like that's amazing. Amazing to read 100 books in a year. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, just in general, I think I just thought that I did really badly this year, and I think it's kind of refreshing to look back and be like, do you know what? Without really aiming to, you've not done too bad. Like, you could do a lot worse, babe. You could do a lot worse. Like, you could do a lot better. Don't get me wrong. You could do a lot better. But like, sometimes you have to prioritize other things, and like this year was just about prioritizing other things, and so you can't be mad at that, or I'm not. Let's just discuss my overall yearly challenges. My yearly challenges this year was I had two, basically. I dropped the rest. I dropped Pop Sugar, dropped Crime Reads. Right, I'll refer you back to that video at the beginning of the year if you don't know what I'm talking about. But I dropped most of them. I even dropped the G's Magical Readathon ones. In fact, it's here August. It's on the 6th of August. Have I even looked at the prompts this year? But yeah, so the main two that I was focusing on was my Reading Around the World challenge, which was every month it's set on like a different continent or a different area of the globe, and you read from that place. And the other one was Reading Through the Decade. So each month was a different decade, or there was a couple of years that were joined together, and each month you read like a historical fiction book or a book that was set in that decade, and you read it. And I really enjoyed both of these challenges. Like, I had a whale of a time. However, it was a lot of pressure to try and find and source the books I was going to read. As I said, the majority of the books that I read are from the library. So therefore, I also had to source them and see where I could find them. Or if they weren't on Scribd, then I'm going to have to pay for them, blah, blah, blah. So, and obviously I was listening exclusively pretty much on audiobooks. Well, 80% of my reading was on audiobooks. So, like, I need to get the audiobook somehow, somewhere. Like, come on. So yeah, I had to drop it, but I really did enjoy it. So I feel like I'm going to pick it up maybe next year, because it's towards the end of the year. I don't think it's going to happen, and I think I'm just going to let myself read what I want to. I might do like some reading projects that are like surrounding those, reading from other countries towards the end of this year, or maybe reading from a particular decade maybe later on this year. But like overall, as for this yearly challenge, I think I'm just going to have to drop all my yearly challenges. The main priority has just been keep reading. Just keep swimming, like just keep reading, like, do you know what I mean? Just, we're chunking along, like we're going to keep reading. So a lot of my goals and my aims for my reading just fell to the wayside. Like, reading more diversely, it's just got to be more of a monitoring year, do you know what I mean? And like, this is more of like a lifelong goal, do you know what I mean? Like, a lifelong goal is to like always constantly be maintaining that and keeping on top of that. But this year has not been that great, because I've barely been reading, and like, I'm just trying to make sure I keep reading at this point. Like, I'm barely out of my slump. I'm still kind of a bit slumpy at all times. Like, I'm never really like, oh my god, like, yeah, these days anymore, like how I used to be. So, which isn't a bad thing. Like, I just think these days, I don't know, I'm just like so busy doing things that when I'm not doing things, I'm just like, okay, I can read, but like, I'm not like, oh my god, let me read. Do you know what I mean? So I think that all of these things I should have at the beginning of the year just said this is a monitoring year, because then I would be on track. And that's what I'm going to take it away, is monitor how diverse you're reading and have it in your brain. And I did. And monitor how many indie books you're reading and have it in your brain. And I think I have read quite a few, but I don't know, because I haven't like fully done all of the stats for that. Then we've got DNFs, track your DNFs, and I don't even want to do that. I don't even know why I said it. I don't want to do it. It's too much stress. As I said, it took me hours to update my reading spreadsheet as it was. Then we've got Reading to Zero. I'll do a Reading to Zero update. I'm going to have a whole plan for this. But you've seen, I haven't been reading physically, so I haven't done any of my Reading to Zero. I'm not going to read to zero anymore, just as a bit of a spoiler. But I am going to have like we're going to have a multi-pronged attack at my shelves. That's what I'm going to call it, a multi-pronged attack. And there'll be a whole video on that at some point. But it might be a while, because I'm like going to film lots of the prongs first before I come back to you. And then we've got have an uploading schedule, babe. You don't even upload. So that's great. And then we have editing, like learn how to edit. And I feel like my editing is much better. Let me know what you think, hopefully. But I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I want to keep learning and keep growing. And then the last thing was about content. I think it was just about like me wanted to be more on top of the ball, like coming up with more like fresh ideas. And like, I like some of the ideas that I've done, but they haven't been uploaded yet. Like, but also I missed something. I missed the Barbenheimer opportunity. And as soon as people started posting about Barbenheimer, I was like, oh my god, dumb. Like, that's the sort of fresh ideas that you wanted. Like, you should have done something that tied into Barbenheimer. But I missed that like social media point. And like, even when Love Island came out again this year, like the summer version, I could have even got my Love Island TBR game out again, and like did a video of that. and so I haven't been as fresh on the polls, but that's because a lot of my videos are also like retrospective. So all in all, that's how my reading has been. And yeah, overall, what my aims for the next half of the year, my aims for the next half of the year is just to keep monitoring the situation, just keep monitoring and just keep reading. And I hope you guys have had a good first 7 months of the year. And I'll see you, hopefully, continue posting, and also see you soon. Bye guys! Just as it starts to get dark.